Welcome to KMUZ Theater Talk. I'm Ann McBride.
And I'm Ed Shopes, and we're here the first and third Fridays of the month to tell you all about what's happening in the Mid-Willamette Valley theater world.
On today's program, we'll talk with director John Hamilton and actors Olivia, Claudell, and Sara Wright from Gallery Theater's upcoming production of Romeo and Juliet, Choose Your Own Ending. The show runs March 22nd through April 7th.
And in our second interview segment, we'll talk with artistic director Hannah Fawcett and actors Elliot Grass and Claire Snyder from the Struts Frets Theatre Company production of Little Women, running March 28th through 30th at the Dallas Event Center. But first, let's get started with our Theater Talk calendar. Take it away, Ann.
Albany Civic Theater at albanycivic.org. April 5th through 27th, Albany Civic will stage The Prom, a musical about four brassy Broadway actors who help a small-town high schooler who wants to bring her girlfriend to the prom. Love and acceptance overcome community fears in this feel-good modern musical.
Brush Creek Playhouse at brushcreekplayhouse.com. The Brush Creek Players' first show of the 2024 season, Jack and the Beanstalk, closes March 17th.
Children's Educational Theater at cetsalem.org. Online registrations are open for CET's 5-week-long summer theater experience for students from grades 3 to 12. Go to cetsalem.org and secure a spot for your kiddos.
The Elsinore Theater is at elsinoretheater.com, and for information about local events and touring shows on stage at the Elsinore, check out their website and Facebook page.
Gallery Theater at gallerytheater.org. Romeo and Juliet, Choose Your Own Ending opens at Gallery Theater March 22nd and runs through April 7th. The audience votes throughout the performance to determine which course true love will take. In this irreverent madcap reimagining of Shakespeare's most beloved romance. We'll interview director John Hamilton and two actors from the show later in today's episode.
Kaiser Homegrown Theater is at kaiserhomegrowntheater.org. And the second show of Kaiser Homegrown season is Silent Sky by Lauren Gunderson. And that's coming up April 12th through 28th. This play is based on the true story of Henrietta Leavitt, a 19th century astronomer.
The Majestic Theater is on Facebook and at majestic.org. They are doing The Revolutionists by playwright Lauren Gunderson and directed by Lee Matthews Bach. And it closes March 17th at the Majestic Theater. Check out our podcast for an interview with the directors and two actors from the show. And Monty Python's Spamalot with books and lyrics by Eric Idle and music by John Dupre and Eric Idle runs May 3rd through 19th at the Majestic. It's directed by Ashley Barbeau.
Mid-Valley Musical Theater is at mvmtheater.org and on Facebook at Mid-Valley Musical Theater. Auditions for their summer musical Mamma Mia are happening June 8th. Check out their website for details.
Pinnacle Theater at pinnacletheater.org. Continuing through March 23rd at Pinnacle is The Prom, a great musical directed by Robert Sahlberg. It's been getting rave reviews from audiences, and you can learn more about the show on our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast. Open auditions for the drama Boy Gets Girl by Rebecca Gilman are tomorrow, March 16th at Pinnacle Theater's downtown Salem rehearsal studio. It's directed by Emily Loberg, and you can find more info on Pinnacle Theater's website and on Facebook. And Joe Dodge's acting workshop for actors 18 and older is at Pinnacle Theater's rehearsal studio in downtown Salem. To sign up for this year's spring classes, go to tickets.pinnacletheater.org.
The Salem Playhouse also offers acting classes for both kids and adults. Those are held at Kaiser Homegrown Theater and also adult classes at Chemeketa Community College. To sign up, go to thesalemplayhouse.com and click the Classes tab.
Spotlight Community Theater at spotlightcommunitytheater.org. Coming to Spotlight May 9th through 19th is Much Ado Out West by Wade Bradford and directed by Shannon Rempel.
Struts and Frets Theatre Company at strutsandfretstheater.org will present Little Women March 28th through 30th at the Dallas Event Center. It's adapted from the Louisa May Alcott classic novel by prolific playwright Kate Hamill, and it's directed by Terry Kitagawa. We'll have an interview with 3 actors from the show later in today's program.
Corbin University at corbin.edu/theater-arts. March 17th at Corbin is Sleeping Beauty, Briar Rose, based on the tales of Charles Perrault and the Brothers Grimm.
Western Oregon University is at wou.edu/theater, and May 29th through June 1st, John Proctor is the Villain will be on stage in the Rice Auditorium at Western. That's directed by Riza Fleming.
Willamette University at wutheater.com. Brian Friel's Irish Family Masterwork, Dancing at Lunasa, directed by Susan Coramel, comes to Willamette's Pelton Theater April 11th through 27th.
New to KMUZ Theater Talk calendar is Central High School in Independence. They're at chsperformingarts.net. And Central High Spring Musical is Legally Blonde. It runs May 11th through 18th. Go to their website or their Performing Arts Booster Club on Facebook for showtimes and tickets.
McKay High School on Facebook at McKay Thespians. They are doing the spring musical Little Shop of Horrors, running May 10th through 18th.
McNary High School is on Facebook at Ken Collins Theater, and Shakespeare's classic Twelfth Night runs May 15th through 18th at McNary High.
North Salem High School is on Facebook at NSHS Theater. Tuck Everlasting will be on stage at North April 11th through 20th, and that's followed by Sense and Sensibility playing May 23rd through 25th.
South Salem High School is on Facebook at Saxon Drama. 12 Angry Jurors will be on stage at South Salem High May 10th through 18th, and South Salem High Spring Improv Night is scheduled for May 23rd.
Sprague High School. Next up at Sprague are one acts April 11th through 20th.
And West Salem High School is on Facebook at West Salem Drama Department. Radium Girls comes to the West Salem High stage May 16th through 25th.
And that wraps up our KMUZ Theater Talk calendar for plays around the Mid-Willamette Valley.
Coming up next, Ann and I talk with director John Hamilton and actors Olivia, Claudell, and Sara Wright from Gallery Theater's upcoming production of Romeo and Juliet, Choose Your Own Ending. We'll be right back with more KMUZ Theater Talk right after this short break.
We're talking with the director, John Hamilton, and the actors, Olivia, Claudell, and Sara Wright, of the play Romeo and Juliet, Choose Your Own Ending. Welcome to Theater Talk, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hey, John, I'm really interested in this show. This sounds like a lot of fun. How did you come across it, and why did you want to do this show at Gallery in this moment?
Well, I first saw this show back in Washington, D.C. in 2010. It premiered as a part of the Fringe Festival one summer, and it was put on by a couple of my friends that I had gone to college with, so I knew a lot of the cast and crew, and I mean, the show was just amazing. Like, I went to see it multiple times to catch so many different endings. When I moved out here and I started working and volunteering at the Gallery Theater, I knew that this was a show I wanted to bring to life because it hasn't been performed very many places, and I just am a big fan.
The title is Romeo and Juliet, Choose Your Own Ending. What exactly does that mean?
It is set up like those old choose your own adventure books from the 80s, where at different times during the play, Romeo will turn to the audience and ask the audience to vote on one of two choices as to what he should do next. And as a result, there are 8 multiple endings that could result from the actions and choices of the audience.
And they vote by acclamation, by clapping or cheering, or
It's voting by hand raise, but you can definitely sway the vote by shouting and hollering and,
So, do you have to rehearse all 8 endings?
Yes, that has been our plan for these past several months. We have been rehearsing each run through of each ending. The early scenes obviously repeat, and it gets more and more varied as you get into the later act.
Yeah, lately John has been testing us and making different choices at random. Like, not like super randomly, just once Romeo gets to a decision threshold, we're not quite sure which way to go, and John chooses for us, and that's the way we go. And I find that's a bit more practical, especially as we're getting closer to the performance dates.
Sara, fill us in a little bit about what your role or roles are in this show.
My role as Mercutio is I'm basically Romeo's best friend ever. And I find as I delve deeper in this character, I'm not just a performer, which I feel Mercutio very much is. He loves to perform and shine and make his friends laugh and make the audience laugh, but he's also very much a schemer, and he notices different ways things could go. He has different plans, especially if he happens to survive certain endings. He has different plans to bring people together and hopefully bring the houses together as one. Although he can be a bit distracted at times, though, which is how sometimes the endings may end a bit tragically. Oopsie days.
I think everyone's favorite character is Mercutio.
Yeah, he's my favorite character. It's just a blast playing this guy. It's once I have all my lines and cues memorized, I feel like I can just play as a character.
Yeah.
That's the best thing to feel when you're an actor.
I think as an actor and a director, knowing all the characters in this show, I agree with you. Mercutio is an actor's dream because he's so full of himself.
He is. He is just full of it.
And he's so witty.
Oh yeah. It's so hard for me to be witty on the spot, which is why I like Mercutio. His wit is already written out for me. I just have to say the words.
You don't have to apologize for that. That was Shakespeare's job.
I always think about how the original text, like the show is basically a comedy up until Mercutio dies, because he is like the biggest source of comedy in the play.
But he even makes fun of himself dying.
Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man.
That's my favorite line from the whole show.
That's how I plan on dying. Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave person.
Olivia, what are your roles? I know you're playing Rosaline, but are you playing other roles in the show as well?
Yeah, so in 4 of the tracks, I'm playing Rosaline, and then in the other 4 tracks, which are Juliet's endings, I'm playing the prince.
And what's it like to play Romeo's original love interest and then come to a point where the audience chooses who he's going to be with? Is it going to be Rosaline or is it going to be Juliet?
It's really fun because there's not like 400 years of character interpretation like bearing down on Rosaline. She's mentioned twice in the canon text. She's never like actually physically on stage with lines and characterization. So it's fun because I can literally do whatever I want with it. And she's a lot more modern. She has like a very modern sensibility. But it's fun to wonder, like from a almost psychological perspective, why some audiences would choose Juliet's endings and why they would choose Rosaline's endings. And I think it's going to be really fun to see which way audiences sway.
Well, I can
So-
tell you from having seen this played numerous times, I would definitely choose Rosaline to be Romeo's choice because I've seen the other ending so many times.
Well, that's
Right.
true.
Mhm.
So does that mean Juliet isn't in the other endings?
Juliet does still play a large role no matter what the choice is, because Juliet's still there at the party when Romeo meets Rosaline, and there's other characters there at the party who Juliet might happen to meet. So we do get to see how her story plays out if she and Romeo had never met.
And she lives.
Maybe.
That depends on the audience.
Good question.
Will the audience
Oh.
make a wise or not so wise decision? That is
Right.
totally up to those who show up.
Yeah, because Juliet and Rosaline, that's just the first choice. And there's other choices that could lead to which way fights go and other decisions later on.
This just sounds like a blast.
Fascinating.
Mhm.
It just sounds like so much fun. I mean, not just from the audience standpoint, but for the actors as well.
Yeah.
So, John, how close to Shakespeare's original text are the lines in this show, or is it all pretty much modernized?
It is surprising to me how well any new lines kind of mimic Shakespeare's style. Usually, when a selection is made and things veer off the beaten path, more and more modern language gets folded in. Like Olivia was saying, Rosaline speaks a lot more modern than her peers, but Romeo is still very Shakespearean, Mercutio is very Shakespearean, and it's almost as if you're reading unearthed, like hidden texts from Shakespeare, that it's like, oh, there's this lost play that we're suddenly getting to read.
What do you want audiences to take away from this?
I just hope that one, they have a good time, and two, because we don't do a lot of Shakespeare at Gallery Theater, I think it's a nice way to see how accessible these older plays are and the fun that can be had with those.
And it's perfect because Romeo and Juliet, you picked a good one.
Yeah, it's a very accessible text,
Yeah.
and it's one that everyone's read it in high school, like everyone's familiar with it.
Yeah.
Everyone from the Royal Shakespeare Company to Carol Burnett has had a swing at this show at one point or another. And now
Right.
it's your turn, right?
Mhm. I just hope that people come maybe more than once to see how it turns out different ways.
Oh, yeah, because it would be different every night.
That's right.
Well, folks, what if Romeo had stayed helplessly in love with Rosaline instead of Juliet, or if Mercutio and Tybalt hadn't died, but instead gotten together themselves? And you can vote for any one of those choices at Romeo and Juliet. Choose your own ending. It's at Gallery Theater in McMinnville, March 22nd through April 7th. Tickets are on sale now. You can buy tickets at the Gallery Theater with an ER.org website. And it's in my favorite part of Gallery Theater, the Arena Theater, which is a smaller house to the side of the large main stage theater. And it is a wonderful place to play in and to watch a play from. Go see this show. Thank you so much, John Hamilton, the director, and Sara Wright and Olivia Claudell, two actors from Romeo and Juliet. Choose Your Own Ending. Thank you for coming here and talking to us about it on KMUZ Theater Talk.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Joining us in our next interview are actors Hannah Fawcett, Elliot Grass, and Claire Snyder from the Struts Frets Theatre Company production of Little Women by playwright Kate Hamill. Stay with us. KMUZ Theater Talk continues right after this short break.
We're talking with Hannah Fawcett and Elliot Grass and Claire Snyder, who are appearing in Little Women at the Dallas Event Center, March 28th through 30th. It's the Struts Frets Company. Welcome to Theater Talk, you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hey, Hannah, Louisa May Alcott wrote this story. mainly about the women who stayed behind as the patriarch of the family went off to fight in the Civil War. It's a really terrific novel. But the stage version by Kate Hamill promises to be, as Hamill says, a radical adaptation and a conscious explosion of the archetypes found in the novel. Tell us a little bit about Hamill's take on Alcott's original novel.
At our very first table read, we all sat around and talked about our relationship with the source material, with Alcott's novel. And this version is such a beautiful love story to the original text. What it does so effectively, though, is it expands moments not seen in the novel. Claire has an amazing scene as Meg in Act 2 after Meg has had her children. And it really explores Meg's motherhood in a way that you don't get to see in the novel. And this particular adaptation does such a beautiful job of highlighting the relationship between Jo and Beth. And that is oftentimes not visible, I think, in adaptations. And that's what it does so beautifully. Very, very true to the original text. There are a couple things that have been changed, I think, for the better. We're looking at, I think a really, really effective adaptation of this really wonderful story.
Well, Alcott wrote her novel in the 1920s. It's been a favorite since. The novel with its long timeline and broad sweep has to be condensed to a stage show. And it sounds to me like Hamill's approach brings, I guess, a more revealing, more modern take on family life before the marches.
Yeah, I think what it does so well is it distills the story in a beautiful way. It's very concentrated. The way that Kate Hamill has adapted it is that it falls within a shorter period of time. Many of the events still, the hallmark events of Little Women still happen, but they happen in a condensed timeline. So the story ends, sorry, spoilers, but it has been out for 100 years, more than 100 years. So go read it or pause the interview and then come back. But the story ends at Beth's death. And so it doesn't continue on after that, which I think is so brilliant. We don't go with Amy and Laurie to Europe. We stay in the march home. And I think that's what's so wonderful about this adaptation is that it really is about the marches at home in that place that they all grow from. That's, what I'm talking about in terms of distilling the story.
That's wonderful because really the place of the March's house is so important to the story. And that front room where they all do everything is wonderful. How is it staged? Is everything happening in that room?
For us as actors, we do shift locales in some sense.
Yeah.
The majority takes place in the March home and that anchor point of these families, but we do have a couple satellite locations, if you will, where we've got the Lawrence's home, where we've got Laurie and his grandfather, or we have Aunt March's home, the place where, Jo usually sits with her and reads to her. But we always return back and cycle back to the March home. And Kate Hamill loves to have these short, quick scenes that keep the kind of frenetic energy of life alive so that the audience doesn't get too comfortable in that March household, so that we're still seeing the motion and the movement of time and the lives of all of these people. It does take place elsewhere, but really and truly, it always comes back to their origin story. It comes back to their heart, which is their home. And I think that also helps, as Hannah was saying, Beth and Jo are so central in this version. And Beth is always at home. And I think sometimes when you have different stagings and adaptations or films, we miss pieces of Beth because she is not elsewhere. And so I think that the way that she's adapted this helps continue that inclusion of that specific sister in this story, and also how she connects with each of the other siblings.
And Claire, you're playing Meg, and as Hannah mentioned, you have a really heartrending scene in the show. Tell us a little bit about her role as one of the March sisters.
When I read this as a young woman, I always connected very much with Meg because I always knew I wanted to be a mother. And oftentimes it's something that sometimes in modern society gets overlooked about the emotional labor that it takes to parent and care for and birth and sustain life outside of your own. And even for those of us who want to be mothers and want to have children, the reality that sets in when you have screaming children and you haven't slept and just want to eat a jar of jam and you just want a moment of peace and you just want to feel like yourself. Hamill has written it so beautifully. The desire to both return to that childhood of innocence and less responsibility, but also acknowledging and accepting that you are growing and changing and you are becoming the Marmee now. You are now the parent responsible for the success and development of the young person that you have given birth to. And the way that she writes it is just, it hits me every time. I love as an actor projects like this where I directly relate to what that feels like. I remember having 2 kids under the age of 2 and going, I can't stop changing diapers and I'm never clean and I just want to eat real food and not have noise around me. And just the beauty and heartbreak in those moments and letting her just be a woman without trying to fix anything, right? She just gets to pour her heart out about her life experience. And we see her just go, I still have to move forward. I will figure this out. And I love that she develops Meg in such a beautiful way in that moment.
And Elliot, tell me about the youth ensemble.
This is my 3rd time working with Struts Frets Youth Ensemble. And it's such an enriching experience to get to work with so many professionals who care so much about what they do and put a ton of effort into their work. And as an aspiring young artist, it's really inspiring to see that. And it makes me want to kind of become a better actor, a better writer, a better version of myself.
What do you actually do in rehearsal?
It's mostly just watching the rehearsals and taking notes on my understudy tracks, and I occasionally help the production assistants.
What roles are you understudying?
I understudy Joe and Beth.
Wow, those are 2 huge parts.
Yes.
And what happens if somebody slips on a banana peel?
I would go on if they needed me.
So do you have both of those roles memorized at this point? Are you off book?
Not yet. I'm in progress.
That's got to be hard. I mean, I asked that as an actor because if I were going to understudy 2 roles as important as those, I would be a little freaked out.
Yeah.
I want to highlight that Elliot is always the most prepared actor in the room at any point on any project I've ever worked with her on.
100%. 100%.
Always.
Thank you.
Elliot is amazing. And what's interesting about this particular project is because the show does have some romance and the adult company, it's in the title, we're all adults. So, if I were to get sick, that means that I would go out and then also the actor playing Laurie would go out.
Oh,
because we work opposite each other and it would be inappropriate to have an adult work with a minor in that capacity. So we have 3 youth ensemble understudies, and so they are all ready to go on should that happen. And they're all understudying 2 tracks.
Wow.
What is the cast list like, Hannah? I am familiar with the book. I'm not familiar with the play. Who is in the play that is in the book?
The exciting thing about this production is that, it's all super distilled. It's very condensed. So Marmee doubles with Aunt March, which is really, really fun.
Wow.
And then Mr. Brooke in the novel, Kate Hamill has changed it to Brooks, plural. I'm not entirely sure why the change, but it has been changed. So he plays the bad publisher that Joe goes to and kind of gets slapped with reality. And then he also has another role that I'm not going to share because it is too delightful and it is too surprising.
Oh, great.
And it's very fun. And then Mr. March also doubles with Mr. Lawrence as well. So Laurie's grandfather. And then everybody else, we all play our one role. So the older adults are the ones who end up doubling the most.
So who is Laurie?
Laurie is played by a fantastic actor named Jay Sharma. He works with us a lot at Struts and Frets. He is a multidisciplinary artist, so he does lights, he does sound. He's also sound designing this show.
Okay, so Claire, tell me about the costumes.
Well, speaking of doubling roles, it makes it a wonderfully challenging opportunity as a costumer to try and differentiate these folks who are playing multiple characters, but also sometimes the change has to happen on stage. We also have to transition these young women into older grown women. And then for me, at least as a costuming artist, it's important for me to have their characters represented in the clothing.
Yes.
To, take the themes that Terry and Hannah have created in this show and express them visually, because we are visual people, right? When we go and see a show, the costumes are either going to help or hurt what the actors and the team have worked so hard on. And so for me, it's always about doing research about the time, looking at the fashion of the time, and then delving into how might that character be expressed through an appropriate frame for that time period.
Right, because Meg and Amy would be differently dressed.
Yes. And, Jo, especially as she juggles her identity with her womanhood or her gender, right, is going to express herself very differently than Meg, who all she wants is to be feminine, the ultimate feminine, soft, beautiful form. And then Amy, who loves nice things and who wants to be a lady. And then there's Beth, who is a bit shy and bashful in her identity. And so using different fabrics and colors and tones to express that, but all within the realm of possibility for this Civil War era, right? Where we have clothes that had to be useful and had to be meaningful to these people because they might only have one dress. And so it is a delightful challenge. And I've actually gotten to use some authentic Civil War era costume patterns, which is lovely.
Wow.
And as always, my mother is helping me. Thank goodness for her. I fell ill a little bit ago, and she has helped me keep up the pace because this is also the first show where I'm in a role and costuming in quite a while. And so it just presents a really neat challenge as an artist, and you learn a lot about yourself. But it also helps me appreciate this show and understand my character a little bit better too. Also, my goal is always to make everyone feel like their costume enhances what they are doing, not restricting or inhibiting their character development or something that feels off for what they have created too. And since we have understudies, right, being prepared that if something were to happen, I need to be able to clothe them in a similar manner. Yeah. And one thing I also really appreciate about being who I am is knowing that everybody has a different body shape, size, comfort level, and being able to accommodate that as well. Because we all ought to feel like we shine in our costumes, and that it only enhances the hard work that is put behind this project.
I have a really trivial question. What are you doing about the underclothes? Because Civil War era, they wore corsets and bustles and stuff.
Yeah, so we are in a little bit smaller space, so we're not doing like large hoop skirts or anything along those lines. But we do have, lots of petticoats for all of us. We have rehearsal skirts so that we can get familiar with the movement of being in a larger skirt, right?
Yes,
Making a little bit more space. And then we just allow the actors to their comfort level, whatever is underneath the clothing, whatever they feel comfortable. I like to have period pieces underneath my costumes because that's me, and
it helps you remember.
Yeah. And to me, it makes me stand different. It makes me feel a little bit different. But in that same vein, I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. So I've also tried to build structure into the costumes so that if they just want to wear whatever they naturally wear, they can still look period without having to feel restricted if something like a corset is going to feel restricting. And Kate Hamill loves movement, right? So we have to take a little bit of a modern flavoring, if you will, to the clothing that we've chosen for these characters. But I think we've struck a really beautiful balance. And again, I am so grateful for the opportunity to get to showcase multiple facets of my my person. you know.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
such a lovely thing to be a part of a company that gives me the opportunities to do that.
I'm going to loop back to Hannah for just a sec. You're playing Jo March, and Kate Hamill has painted Jo in a different way in this production. Tell us a little bit about that.
The main thing I think that Kate Hamill is exploring in this is Jo's queerness. This is really the most overtly queer adaptation of Little Women that I have come across, because Jo is constantly smashing against the walls of what is asked of her as a woman in this time period, and really rankles at that box that she's put in. So you know, it always feels wrong to even use she, her pronouns to talk about this particular Jo, because I do think this particular Jo is so ensconced in a challenge of finding the gender identity that feels best for her in this time period, and how those two things are at war with each other.
And Elliot, I've got a quick question for you. You
Yes.
mentioned that you are sitting at the table as understudy and taking notes on your understudy roles and helping with other tasks at rehearsals. You must have some moments in the show that you look forward to, either at rehearsal or when you step in to substitute for an actor. Tell us about what some of your favorite moments are, or one of your favorite moments is.
Something I really like that we do a lot at Struts Frets is these kind of dream ballet sequences that are abstract pieces of movement that aren't necessarily written into the script. They're movement sequences. They can show passages of time. They can show like certain plot points in the story. And I think it's really exciting to kind of see that artistic vision come to life on the stage, and just to see it all happen.
This is an all ages production. It's appropriate for all members of the family. This is one that we really encourage, you know, folks from 4 to 94 to come and take part in.
Well, folks, Little Women, a new adaptation of the Louisa May Alcott classic novel by playwright Kate Hamill, is produced by Struts Frets Theatre Company and directed by Terry Kitagawa. It plays at the Dallas Event Center in downtown Dallas, Oregon, March 28th through 30th at 7 p.m. And there's a 2 p.m. matinee also on March 30th that is ASL interpreted. For information and tickets, go to strutsandfretstheater.org. Thank you, Hannah Fawcett, Claire Snyder, and Elliot Grass for joining us here on KMUZ Theater Talk.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's time to wind up today's KMUZ Theater Talk program. Thank you for joining us. Next week at 9 a.m., you can tune in to Talking About Art with Joel Zach. KMUZ Theater Talk is a proud member of the Mid-Valley Theater Network.
KMUZ Theater Talk comes your way at 9 a.m. the first and third Friday of the month on your radio or smart speaker at 100.7 and 88.5 FM, on your favorite radio app, or streaming live at kmuz.org. You can also listen to our KMUZ Theater Talk programs anytime, wherever you get your podcasts.
Ed and I return April 5th with a brand new KMUZ Theater Talk program. Meanwhile, check our KMUZ Theater Talk Facebook page for news and updates about live theater in the Mid-Willamette Valley.
If you haven't yet joined in to support Theater Talk and the rest of KMUZ's great community radio programs, please go to kmuz.org right now to join the KMUZ Power Up campaign with a monthly donation that fits your budget. And thanks. Until next time,
We'll see you in the front row.